My sin was strong, but Jesus was stronger. Is that someone's testimony tonight? Because that's my testimony as well. Let's give it up for the praise band. Thank you so much for, show my face a little bit. Thank you, praise band, for leading us into worship tonight. We are so excited for what is about to happen tonight. Our whole theme this evening is about loving in the gray, and we're going to be talking about relationships. So whether you are single, whether you are in a relationship, maybe you're engaged, maybe you're even married, hopefully you can find yourself maybe in a stage of transition right now, and we're going to be talking about something that I'm very, very passionate about, which is marriage. Now, full disclosure, I was once married. Yes, that is correct. I was once married. I was married, and unfortunately, I had to see my marriage end. And that was a chapter of life that was very difficult, as you might imagine. And so I'm finding myself in the gray now, as God is like restoring my life and putting new pieces together, and it's pretty awesome. But in this process, in this loving in the gray chapter of my life, I've learned a lot about marriage. I'm so proud of what God has given us in marriage. I think it's the most powerful gift that God has given us here on earth. And so as you can tell, I'm very, very passionate about it, very excited about it, and I can't wait to share this wisdom and this knowledge through three different couples that will be coming up pretty soon. And so yeah, let's just give them a round of applause, and we're going to be hearing about marriage and relationships. Don't be bashful, guys. Come on. Give it up for our panelists for this evening. So this evening, we're going to be having three different couples, different stages of lives, and I'm about to allow them to introduce themselves pretty soon here, but hopefully you guys will be able to glean as much wisdom. Hopefully you can ask some questions and yeah, just get some good experience about marriage. So I'm going to start from the youngest, and we're going to go over like this. If you can introduce yourselves, how long you've been married, and where did you go for your honeymoon?
Hi, I'm Debbie Campos. We've been married for 3 years, coming up on 4 here in May. And our honeymoon was in Paris.
Ooh.
I'm Abner.
Okay.
Get to be married to Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie and Abner.
I'm Donnie Keto, and this is my wife, Mary. And we've been married for 11 years, coming up on 12, also been married. And our honeymoon was a cruise at the height of the swine flu. So we had a couple extra days at sea where our fun facilitator on the cruise got a workout, but we went down to Belize.
Belize. Awesome. Amazing.
My name is Beverly Sedlacek, and I'm married to this fine man here. And we've been married 34 years.
Let's go!
And all I got was to go to New Orleans for my honeymoon.
You know, I like the way she said that, you know. But we had a great time in New Orleans. It was wonderful. Got to enjoy everything, so it was wonderful.
Would you do it again?
Oh, yes, I would.
Awesome. All right. So Belize, Paris, New Orleans. You have some ideas for where you want to go on your honeymoon. All right. So to kick off this evening, I want to actually ask or do some myth busting. Is that cool with you guys? I want to do some myth busting. So I want you to raise your hands if you think this is a fact. All right? So raise your hands if it's a fact. If you don't think it's a fact, you think it's just a myth, just don't raise your hand. All right? So here's the first myth. All right. So God has one soulmate for each person. So raise your hand if you think that this is a fact. God has one soulmate for each person. Oh, wow. Not even one person? Really? Okay, wow. All right. So what do you guys think? Like, do you think, no? No? All right. Panelists have spoken. All right. Cool. Next myth. A great relationship should always be easy. A great relationship should always be easy. Is that a fact? Oh, okay, so we got one brave soul. Good on you. Thank you. All right. So, okay, everyone else thinks it's a myth. All right, okay. Let's go to the next one. So, a good relationship should make you feel better about yourself as a person. Yes. Okay, so we got, okay. This is good. Okay. All right. Do you mind actually like sharing why you think that? Is that okay? Sorry, I just put you on the spot. Yeah, you. Yeah. Wait, say it again? Oh. Sorry, I just totally put you on the spot. Because it should. All right. Give him a round of applause. That's a good answer. Because it should. All right. All right, so the last myth. A good partner should complete you. Okay, wow. All right. Panelists, what do you guys think? No?
Probably not.
All right. Okay, well, I appreciate it. Good. I appreciate the good boldness. All right. So we're going to actually start asking you guys some questions. You guys ready? Ready for it? All right. So the first question, we're going to start with the ones that have earned it. 30 years plus, all right? Can we start with the seller checks? Is that cool with you guys? All right. So I want to ask you guys, is it true that God only has one person for me?
Well, I'm going to start by answering that question, and I would say no. There are actually many people that you could be compatible with. God has made us very complex as individuals, and there are many things that draw people to one another. For example, sometimes likes attract, sometimes differences attract. You know, sometimes someone who's more sanguine, like Beverly, is that I'm attracted. You know, I'm more melancholy. So there are many different factors that attract people to one another. So I don't think there's just one right person. There can be many persons that could work well with one another. And so it's more complex than that. Honey, what do you think?
I agree. I think that on any given Sunday, you can find someone that would work with you.
Sunday's coming up. Can we get an amen? Sunday's coming up. All right, good. Also, I love how you handed that off to your wife. That was beautiful. So we can take notes on that too. All right. So I'm going to ask the Keels, all right? What does it mean to be equally yoked? This is a tough one because this is not just talking about religion or faith. It's also talking about culturally.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you guys think?
Being equally yoked, what does it mean to be equally yoked is like a super short question that is like incredibly, I think, complex. I grew up in a community that often equated that, I think on a spectrum of, I don't want to be like super negative, but I think on a spectrum of somewhere between useless and damaging. Meaning oftentimes equally yoked was something that was describing either a defense of like customs, traditions, that were cherished, all the way to racism. It was, I think, used to defend racism. And then if we look at where the term equally yoked comes from 2 Corinthians, it's Paul talking about idolatry in a community. And according to Paul, as he's talking about idolatry, he's really calling the Corinthians not to sell out their identity as they live in the city of Corinth, as they try to really not to sell out their identity for social expediency. So when we talk about, that definitely has some implications for marriage, but the reality is the call is for Christians in all their relationships to, when equally yoked, meaning the people that you are bonded with. And it has to do with a spiritual alignment. I think being equally yoked is what happens when two people share the relationship that they have with God with each other. And I think it's meant to be between Christians. So what does it mean to be equally yoked? It's in all of our relationships as Christians. It really kind of only works, by the way, if you take on the mantra or the identity of a Christian. That's who Paul is talking to. But if, I guess maybe some of the questions I would ask if you're wondering, well, am I equally yoked in your relationships? And your relationships, I mean, the people that have influence in your life, the people that you're bonded with, the people that sway your beliefs and thoughts. Yeah. Are they bringing you closer to God or further away? And if your friend group is bringing you closer to God, good friends make good spouses. I mean, honestly, before you're a spouse with someone, you're probably a friend. So it's a question to be answered long before a proposal of marriage. It's a question really of community and identity.
That was good.
Well, yeah, I would just add for us, when we were dating right from the start, one of the things that was important to us was our spirituality and sharing with each other. And so for us, that looked like making a commitment to pray together every night, which we've done for the last 14 years that we've been together, and talking about our faith and our religion and what that was going to look like in a marriage context moving forward.
Oh, that was beautiful. Like, if I understood, yeah, let's give them a little round of applause. That was great. So you're encouraging us to share our relationship with God to the other person. That's what it means to be equally yoked. That was beautiful. Thank you, guys. All right, so before I ask Debbie and Abner a question, I'm actually going to put up a quote on the screen. And so this is how the quote goes. You won't have a healthy relationship with someone else if you have a toxic relationship with yourself. Whew. Okay, stop searching for the right person and focus on becoming the right person. Wow, okay. Debbie, Abner, how you guys feeling about this?
Fantastic.
What maturity level do you feel like you need to be in before you can be in a committed relationship?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a barometer particularly, but I think it's really important to be self-differentiated. And like, for lack of better words, or another way of describing that might be just to be your own person with your own personality, your own confidence in the things you love and not love, not depending on other people for that kind of identity where you kind of take on the personality of others because you haven't developed your own, or searching out kind of validation in a partner and going maybe from partner to partner. If maybe you kind of have a series of relationships that have ended badly, maybe that could be a clue that you're not in that place. But I think just being differentiated enough and confident that, like, man, you're an amazing person and you have these great personality traits that you get to offer. If you don't have that, that could be a red flag. You good?
Yeah, you got it.
I think you taught him well, right?
Obviously.
All right, so for the next question, I'm going to ask the Southerchicks again. What's the advice that you would give to someone that's a non-negotiable in their relationship before you can even enter into a relationship? What is a non-negotiable for you guys?
For me, a non-negotiable was having someone who really loved God, who had him in the center of their lives. It was not something I had to encourage and cajole. Yeah. It was, God was in the center of his life, and that's what it was like with David.
Perhaps, building on that, not only should God be in the center of our life and have a passionate love for God, but building on what Abner said, we need to have a passionate care for ourselves. We need to be able to have good boundaries and good self-care, because it's only when we do that, those two things, passionate love for God, a deep care and respect for ourselves, that we can really healthily pour into a partner.
So I'm going to ask you real quick, if you have that kind of like loving relationship with God, how natural is it to love someone else?
Yeah. So many of us have skewed relationships with God. When we look at God as someone who's demanding, who we have to perform for or work hard to please. When we have those distorted views of God, we then move that distortion into our relationships with ourselves and with others. And so having a good view of God, a positive, healthy view of God and his passionate love for us, then that can get poured naturally through us into others.
Beautiful. it's like if our understanding and our identity of who God is helps us understand our identity and the identity of the person that we're in relationship with. It's just very interesting how all that stuff is connected. So I'm going to actually move on to the Keels again. What would you say are the emotional milestones that you should have before considering getting married? What are the emotional milestones you should have before getting into a marriage?
So I worked for someone here at Andrews University when I was a student here who was teaching like family studies, marriage studies, that kind of thing. And she had always said that you needed 2 years to become psychologically bonded with a person, because in that period of time you would experience a range of experiences, like stressful and sad things and things that would make you angry and whatever else. And so I've kind of thought that and shared that with a lot of people over the years, but we've actually known many people, and that was actually about how much time we were dating before we got married, but we've known many people who were together much longer before they got married, many people who were together much shorter before they got married. And the thing is, you can do your very best to prepare for marriage, and you should, and I highly recommend premarital counseling. But at the end of the day, it's going to be one of those things that you can't be fully prepared for, because inherently it requires growth and change together. Marriage is actually kind of like a superhuman task that we do, because it's requiring you to put someone else's needs before your own in many ways for the rest of your life. Okay, so that can be kind of a scary, heavy thing. And the greatest protective factor, I believe, for a successful and happy marriage, with that in mind, that it's calling you to do something that's antithetical to your human nature, is for Christ to be number one. And I know we're kind of all keep coming back to this. Christ has to be number one, and that person number two, and you number three. That doesn't mean that you don't have your needs and you have to practice self-care. But the truth is that when Christ is number one in your life, then no longer is your spouse responsible for your needs and your value, and that's very freeing. You are free to love them no matter what happens. And so my personal value has nothing to do with him. I am valued as a daughter of Christ, period. So I am a wife, and I'm so proud to be his wife, but there is nothing that he could do that would change my personal value, and that frees me to love him unconditionally. So I will wrap that up, but ultimately, do your best to prepare, do your best to know that person, but if you know in your heart right now that Christ is not number one for you, then you are not ready to be married. It's without that, it's just luck, basically.
Wow.
I agree.
Rachel, we might have to give you a podium, and you can just share all your because that was just beautiful. That was great. Yeah, let's just give it up for Rachel again. That was awesome. That was awesome.
Real quick, I just highly recommend, there's a podcast called Death to Life Podcast. You can look it up on Spotify or whatever, Death to Life. And the most recent episode is of my best friend and her husband and their love story and how they got together. And it is amazing, and it is very similar to what I just said. So you should look it up. Death to Life Podcast, Will and Joyce.
I actually know that couple, and they are amazing. Pretty cool. All right, so actually, before I ask Debbie and Abner the next question, I just want to invite you guys. There's going to be a number that's going to be put on the screen. Text in your questions. Ask whatever you want, and we're going to do our best to answer a couple of those questions. So start texting those in, and then we'll get back to those at the end. All right, so back to Debbie and Abner. Rachel was talking about having awareness, having pre-marriage counseling coming into, before you get married. Tell us what are your thoughts. Is that necessary? What is a good pre-marriage counselor like? And I'll just also throw this out there too. Should you have counseling after getting married? So share with us your thoughts.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I am very much an advocate for premarital counseling, simply because I think the benefits outweigh the cons. I think that it's a great opportunity to have a third-party perspective, especially somebody who you trust, a pastor you trust, who could tell you very honestly and candidly what they see and what they're seeing as you are going through your sessions. We did premarital counseling for several reasons. One of them, we were very young when we got married. I mean, we're still very young, but when we got married especially, it was right after graduation, and as sometimes it's easy to think that we know a lot, we've been together for a long time, we know everything about each other, but those sessions showed us that we really had a lot of learning to do. It really, it helped our pastor kind of analyze, like, well, if this is how you argue, like, if this is how he argues, like, what is that going to look like in marriage? And just little examples like that. So we found it incredibly helpful, and I also think after marriage, too, would be after the wedding, yeah. After the wedding, I think it would be an incredible benefit. Every marriage is different. Every couple is different. But like I said, I think there are so many benefits to it, and it's just very, very helpful.
Yeah, and I would say we got to do pre-engagement counseling in undergraduate with the chaplain there, and read books going into it. So we were like feeling super prepared, like really confident. And the first 2 years of marriage were still super hard. Like, we moved to a new city, new jobs, like didn't have any family there, and so like those transitions were blunders. Like, they were really exhaustive, and there were things that like each of us were going through, and we were still having a hard time like learning to adapt to that. And that was with all of this support and training and like love from our families and pastoral care and books. Like, even with all of that, it was still really hard. I can't imagine having done those first few years without any of that kind of preparation. And we've even talked about looking into getting a marriage counselor now just for continued support. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Something that kind of came up in your response, should the counselor always be a pastor, or should they be someone that's trained as a counselor? I'm just going to open it up. What do you guys think?
Oh, my.
Well, there's an instrument that I like to use for premarital counseling called Prepare and Enrich. And Prepare and Enrich, is probably the best researched program for premarital counseling that exists. And we train people to do it. You have to be trained in order to use Prepare and Enrich. But sometimes what I like to suggest is, yes, we need to perhaps go to a pastor or someone who's trained in the use of Prepare and Enrich, but sometimes you run into situations where there's deep brokenness or addiction or other issues that are beyond the scope of practice of a pastor. So you should be able to go to social workers or psychologists or counselors if there is a need for those kinds of issues. And to me, those kinds of issues need to be addressed before you say, I do. Okay? They need to be at least on a journey of healing that both of you are comfortable with.
Awesome.
I remember when I was in college and I'd hear people talk about premarital counseling, and I didn't really have an idea of like what it really was. And so maybe just to give, we went through Prepare and Enrich, so plug for Prepare and Enrich. But it's structured conversations that you are likely not to have on your own. Mm-hmm. Maybe either because you don't want to have that conversation, or maybe you don't even think to ask some of those questions or have those conversations. But they're reflective conversations that are facilitated, that somebody who's trained in it knows how to facilitate that. I think that there's a lot of good conversations to be had about marriage from a lot of different places. But I think when it comes to premarital counseling, you really want to connect with somebody who knows how to structure a conversation specifically for your benefit, specifically to have answer questions and bring up things to discuss ahead of time that you don't want to leave up to chance. You want to make sure that those things can be thorough.
Just as an example, we did it with our chaplain at Southern, and one of the questions that came up, we had a day where we talked about finances, and one of the things that he asked us was how much each of us owed in student loans at that time, which was the only debt we carried. And Donnie knew off the top of his head. I had no idea how much I owed in student loans. We called my financial advisor from his office, and I learned that I owed over $60,000 in student loans. I was taking care of school all by myself. I had no help from my parents or anybody else. And that wasn't it wasn't something I was trying to hide. We'd never thought to talk to each other about that before. It's something that could have very well caused a fight or argument or harsh feelings later on down the road, but we basically had the opportunity with a third party there to be like, okay, you still want to marry me, right? Great, thank you.
All right, so before we get to the questions that the students have asked, I want to ask the Sudlerchecks, how do you prepare for the most difficult moments of marriage? You guys have over 30 years of experience, so I can imagine you've had some difficult moments. So yeah, please share with us.
Yeah. There are some things that you can prepare for, and there are some things that you may not be prepared for, but some of the most difficult things start with what happens every single day. You know, the little things, the investments you make in one another, learning each other's love language. It's the analogy is sometimes given of like investing in a savings account in a bank. And then when a crisis comes, you've invested in it. And so, you know, saying I love you, you know, knowing the other person's love language, doing things, being attentive, being a good listener, a good conflict resolver. When you invest in the relationship every single day, that's the best thing I know to prepare you for when a crisis comes.
And as David indicated, there are some experiences that just happen. Iron sharpening iron. You're rubbing up against each other. You can't. Because we pray for each other and because we live a life of forgiveness, we're challenged to live. Truth that is just believed is not truth. Truth that is lived is truth. And so then you get to, well, what do I really believe? And the challenges, how we fight. I think someone mentioned it already, how we learn to fight before we got married and how we bring that in relationship. And if there are some areas that we need growth in, that is something you really want to develop. You want to develop good communication skills. But at the end of the day, there are just some things that just happens. He got up on the wrong side of the bed. I got up on the wrong side of the bed. And we're both functioning in our emotional brain instead of our thinking brain. And voila, you're off to the races. And yeah, you know, again, how your experience, the trauma you've had in your life or any kind of brokenness you have that is unaddressed is certainly going to impact how you respond when you have interactions that are triggering for you. And so it really is important to address who you are. We can't stress that enough, who we are coming into relationship. David's not going to make me better. He's not going to make me mad. I choose to get mad because I choose to get mad. He doesn't make me mad. And that really is important. He can't. One of our conversations before, right after he asked me to marry him, he told me, it's not your responsibility to make me happy. And I think I said something about, you know, in the moment, oh, I want to make you happy. Well, no, you can't. That's really true. I can provide an environment where he can flourish, but I can't make him happy. That's his decision to choose to be happy. Wow. So, cool.
I hope you guys are writing stuff down, taking notes or mental notes. Like this is amazing, amazing advice, great wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing. So we're going to transition a little bit. You guys ready for the audience's questions? Yeah. All right, we're about to get really into it. So this is question number 1. All right, wow. I'm going to start with the campuses and then we'll move over this way. So rate your marriage out of 5 stars. 5 being out of this world amazing.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Let me answer this one first. So every Thursday, Debbie and I have date nights, and we've been pretty good about it the past few months, just getting back on it, being really strict about it, and then every other week we alternate. So she plans it one week, I plan it the other. Yesterday, she took me on a date to Half Price Bookstore. We bought a game, then went to a little shop, and then played the game, grabbed some hot chocolate and food. It was great. Based on that, 5 stars.
Well, for telling stories, yeah, Abner dances for me in the morning, and simply based off that, 5 out of 5.
Wow, okay. We're doing great. Awesome.
I also say 5 out of 5. I'm not just saying that either. I really enjoy being married, and I actually think it's so much better. They talked about the first couple of years being hard. It gets so much better as you grow and your capacity to love grows and you get to know Jesus better. Marriage just gets so much better. So 5 out of 5. Next year, 6 out of 5, babe.
I also 5 out of 5 would recommend. And I will also say this: the pandemic has been really good for our marriage. The pandemic, yeah. It wasn't for everyone. So I heard. There was a lot of articles that were coming out over the last few months about how it was really make or break. And when you're tested, I think is when you really discover what you're made of. And a lot of time at home, we flourished in that. I learned some new games. I learned to love LaCroix and flavored water. I didn't before. I hated it. But I would say, it does get better with time. And I think don't be afraid to be tested, because that also enriches. So I think we're better for it.
Awesome.
The press is on. No. I think the reality is it can go from 4 to 5 on any given day. So we're up here talking about 5. It's great. It's wonderful. But the reality is, the ebb and flow of relationship. I'd say for the most part, it's definitely a 5. But you can catch me on a day and it's speaking of the pandemic, I loved David being home. It was great. And then there would be some days, don't you have someplace else to go? But that is the ebb and flow of relationship. It's not bad, it's just the ebb and flow of relationship. Yeah. There are times when I don't want him out of my sight. Can't you get any closer? And then there are other times when you can stay over there and I'll be over here. That's just the reality of it. Yeah. And so, for sure, it's been we say to each other all the time, it's just the richest experience. God is just tremendously blessed. And we wouldn't want to be with anybody else. And it's just what a gift he's given to me in David. And I definitely have grown tremendously. I feel loved and special. And so, but it's a 4.5 today.
And I guess I would answer that question by wondering about the metrics we use to rate it. When if I use the metric of covenant commitment to this woman. There's nowhere. It's a 5 and above. I am committed. I'm not going anywhere. And so, that's a more objective metric than how do you feel, about it. But certainly life is an adventure, and I love adventure. And with Beverly, I've had to learn about Black culture. I've been immersed in Black culture. It's been a wonderful growing experience for me, and a part of it is growing out of a me and into a we for us. And that part of the marriage has been really good. So it's great. I love it.
Thank you guys for speaking so candidly and just allowing us to understand the reality of what marriage is like. So we have one more question for you guys, but I'm actually going to, before we go to that last question, if this was helpful for you guys to hear these kinds of conversation, would you like to see a part 2 by any chance? Yeah, ask more questions and stuff? Okay, well, Chap, it looks like we got our work cut out for that, all right? So here's the last question, and maybe I'll start with you guys and then we can go over to the Camposes. What are your thoughts about the idea of waiting for God to bring someone into your life versus being proactive in looking for a partner if you feel that you're ready? So either waiting on the partner or being proactive to find the partner because you are ready.
Well, the press about your question is, really, am I ready? And if I feel like, I need someone, then I'm probably not ready. Okay, if I'm not okay with me, as we've talked about, there's so many people I know who their sense of identity is being with someone rather than being with themselves. And if the press is to be with someone, and I'm working hard to try and find just the right person, chances are I have some more growing to do. And so, will God bring me to someone? I've seen him do it many times, bring two people together. But is it okay to look? Absolutely it's okay to look, as long as you're looking for the right reasons.
And I would answer that question a little more nuanced. My body tells me what my role should be. Every month, every 28 days, a woman releases an egg, and it comes down through the fallopian tube, and it sits there, and it waits until a sperm comes to impregnate it. If that doesn't happen, then that egg goes down and a woman has a menses. But that egg sits there and waits. The sperm, on the other hand, does this remarkable job of going against gravity, working against the woman's body even. Millions of sperm go to try to pursue that one egg, and only one or maybe two are successful. And so for me, my body has taught me that I need to wait. I can be, as David suggested, be ready as I can be. That egg pops out of the ovary, it's mature, it's ready, but it sits there and it waits. Ladies, it waits. And so the sperm does the work. So every 28 days, my body would remind me that this is my role. And I'm active, I'm doing my work of growing and developing and, in a position, I'm not sitting in my room, I'm not waiting for the sky to fall, none of that. I'm doing what I'm doing, but I'm clear about what my role is.
DK, what illustration do you have?
Yo, I don't got nothing on that level. That's for sure. I guess to whoever wrote that, I would say ask that question to God. I can't answer that question for you. Take that question to prayer. And in the meantime, the questions I would have for you are ask yourself, am I living in my values? Do I just go about my day and see whatever happens? Or am I purposeful? Are the things that I do and the places that I go and the people that I hang out with, are they connected to my values being lived out in real time? Or do they just happen because things happen? So while you're praying, you can work on living in your values. You can work on connecting. Do I go to class just because it's there to go to? Or do I go because I'm committed to being a learner? Do I go to work because I need money? Or do I go because there's an ethic to be had, there's skills to be gained, there's growth to be had? Like, live in your values And the other thing I would say is listen to your words. If, man, show me two people who talk to each other negatively all the time, and I'll show you a relationship that's going to fall apart. But it doesn't just start when you start living with someone else or dating someone else. You'll listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth. Are they edifying? Are they lifting somebody else up? Or are they destroying? So, yeah, I can't tell you if you are ready or not, or if you should pursue or not. I say take that question to prayer. And in the meantime, live in your values, work on living in your values, and listen to how you talk to the people around you. And living in your values and edifying other people, man, God will bring somebody into your life.
Yeah, I think the Holy Spirit is eager to express to you if you should move or if you should stay put, and either of those scenarios may happen. But it's going to be much harder for the Holy Spirit to communicate with you about someone that you don't know. So I would say, in that sense, be proactive in meeting people and surround yourself, kind of like what Donnie was saying, surround yourself with the type of people that you would want to spend the rest of your life with. Maybe not just be searching for one person all the time, but are the people that you hang out with on the weekends, are any of those people the type of people that you'd like to see yourself with long term? If that's not the case, then find some new friends and start talking to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, I think of Adam and how, if you read this text carefully, it doesn't say that Adam noticed he was lonely or alone. It says that God said that there was no helper suitable for him. So God's the one who points it out, and then he makes a helper for him. And he makes this helper so that they can take on the world together as king and queen, as rulers of the earth. And so Eve and Adam together are able to do more together than they would be doing alone. So the partner that you find or that you're interested in, is this person going to help you take on the world as a graphic designer, as an architect, as a pilot, as a pastor, as a nurse PT? And if that person, you say like, man, we can change the world together, I would say, go for it.
Yeah, I have done both. I have waited and I have pursued, and in the end, that wasn't even the question for me anymore. It was just enjoying my singleness and loving my singleness and learning about myself in that singleness. And once I did that, once I focused on that, that's all that mattered. And Abner just kind of came after that. And it was like when I finally took my eyes off of like, I want a boyfriend. It was just like, okay. The time was right when I felt like I have developed like my identity in Christ and who I am as his daughter. So that is enjoy. If you are in that season of singleness, I just encourage you, just enjoy it. It's beautiful. It's awesome. But yes, it could be both, you know?
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your beautiful responses. Great wisdom. I hope that the students will come and find you guys and just pick your brains and ask you more questions. But thank you for your honesty and your transparency. This is all the time that we have. We'll try to do a part 2 later on. And I'll pray us out. All right. God, thank you so much for these couples that were here just speaking the truth, what you've done in their lives, how they've experienced your love, especially in the context of marriage. Thank you that this is a gift. Thank you that this is something that you care so much about and that you are going to do everything that you can to make sure that we experience this gift in its fullness. Lord, bless us and keep us. Allow us to enjoy your Sabbath day and to rest in you no matter what. We love you so much. Amen. Let's give it a round of applause for our panelists.